Welcome to the Campground Catalyst Podcast, the show dedicated to fueling success in outdoor hospitality. Whether you're an outdoor adventurer, a campground owner, or looking to build your legacy in outdoor hospitality, you're right where you need to be. We're here to guide you through the fascinating world of campground management, unique real estate strategies, and the gratifying opportunities created by outdoor hospitality. Our mission is to inspire and equip you with the knowledge and insights you need to build a successful business and create a legacy worth leaving. The Campground Catalyst Podcast is proudly sponsored by Beyonder Camp, your trusted outdoor hospitality experts. Subscribe now, join our active online community, and let's ignite our passions and potential together. Welcome back to Campground Catalyst. I'm one of your co-hosts, Adam Lundy. Today, we're bringing you a segment from the Campfire Cashflow segment of the show. This is the section of the show for real estate professionals and those who are looking to buy their first campground or invest in campgrounds. Effectively, just looking, how do you buy it? How do you build it? How do you make it happen? Get that asset so you can start operating it. So today, we're bringing you a topic: buying versus building. Today we're going to discuss the difference between buying an existing campground versus building a new one from the ground up, some of the technical differences between them, the pros, the cons. So if you're looking to buy your first property, or if you're deciding if you want to buy or build, hopefully this will shed some light on it today. If we don't answer your question today, or if you have a different question, or if you have a different point of view, we'd love to hear it. Show notes are going to give you contact information, how you can send us your questions, send us your follow-ups. We will make a special episode on it if we deem it something that everybody needs to know. So please make sure you get it to us. We may air your question or your point on a future episode. Also, be sure to join our Patreon community. That's going to be where we have interactive live discussions with our team, with, of course, other professionals in the space on anything from buying to operating a campground. So we're going to dive right in. I've got my co-hosts here today, Justin, Don, Robert. How you fellas doing?
Doing great.
Fantastic. Great topic.
All right. Beautiful.
Yeah. It's timely. Just this morning, a few hours ago, I had a talk with a big developer in Texas looking to build some new RV campgrounds, something to get in a new niche for him. So it's a very timely topic for lots of people have been considering this asset class.
Well, it's timely for us too at Beyonder Camp, because we are in the process of very early stages of land acquisition on a possible development here in our backyard in Colorado, one that we're looking to buy. And we're going to actually talk about some of those topics today that are relevant to what it looks like to get from the very, very beginning stages, and maybe even what that runway and timeline are going to look like to be in operation and making money. So obviously one of the biggest differences between buying a new one and building one is when you make money, right? It obviously, of course, they say in construction you make money on the purchase. That's the purchase of the land, but you really don't start putting money in your pocket until you got guests making reservations and coming in and checking into the campground. So, of course, when we started Happy Camper Capital, which was the founding company of Beyonder Holdings, we were looking at cash flowing campgrounds. It made sense for us at the time to buy campgrounds that were cash flowing today, meaning the day we close on, the day we sign on the papers, there'd be money in the bank. And that was an easy way to get started. It required less, operating capital to get things going. But of course, there's a lot of benefit, and there's a lot of, there are a lot of pros and cons to, or I should say a lot of pros to building the campground, owning something that somebody else has not owned. It's like owning a car, the history, a brand new car, the history of it, versus buying a used car. So, first, I guess, before we jump in, I want to get initial thoughts from you guys. If you were looking right now in January 2024, would you want to buy cash flowing, or would you want to build something? And maybe give a reason why. Let's start with Justin.
Okay. Well, back to our roots a little bit. I like to see something in operation, but some of those feelings are changing a little bit, and I guess I am really excited about our opportunity in our backyard. Creating what we envision, what we can do, and how to make something super special. I think obviously we can improve on other people's product that they've created, but making our own is really exciting. And I think with that, I will go with building because we can pour our love into something that we see entirely from the ground up. And I think that's exciting.
What do you say, Robert?
I'm kind of torn sometimes because I really love having the guest and having that memory experience. But I would say in the building aspect of it, it's the opportunity to really design the flow that you want. The flow and the experience that you want the customer to have from the time that they arrive to the time they walk into the store to the route that they get to their particular site. So if I had to do that, I'd say give me a blank whiteboard and be able to design the experience that I want to have for the guest.
Yeah, fair point. I mean, kind of to Justin's point, it's great making money right away, but it is nice when you can make it your own. You're not trying to adapt someone else's dream, someone else's vision. So,
Right.
how about you, Don?
Yeah. Well, as your question was, today, right? Today we're in a kind of unique environment. Coming out of 2023, and still a lot of people with looming fears of a recession or war and that kind of stuff. So there's obviously a lot of risk with new development because, like as I think Robert and Justin were hinting to, is you don't know, right? You can assume and expect what traffic you're going to get, and people are going to love the place, but you don't know. You don't have that built-in guests that have been going there for decades, possibly that are going to maybe want to come to your place. So there's definitely risk involved with that. But on the upside is that um, you're starting like with everything brand new. It's like if you were to take a 100-year-old building and try to renovate it, you're going to run into lots of issues. You have to replace electricity and piping and all that kind of stuff. If you're building brand new, all that stuff is up to code and should be good with very little, if any, maintenance issues for at least a decade or so before you have to start fixing or repairing stuff. Right. So it's going to be a big ease of mind to not have to worry about are the pipes going to explode or is the water contaminated, that kind of stuff. So there's definitely a big benefit for building new. And obviously a lot of it depends on your resources available. If you have the resources and can take on that cost to build it and have that the holding costs of the interest and the construction costs and what that to get to that point before you can cash flow, then that would, I think, would still be the best way to go if you have the right location and then have the right I guess ways to implement great ideas are going to work. But also that everybody loves cash flow. It's great to have cash flow from day one as well, and not have to worry about is it going to work.
Yeah. Well, I'll jump in, and my perspective is kind of a big it depends, but yeah, obviously today my feeling is the development in this present market of the moment, in Q1 2024, is that development makes sense. And there are a couple factors I'm looking at. On the purchase side, when we first got into this space in outdoor hospitality, buying a property, the cap rates were higher, which meant the prices were lower. There was a different demand cycle. Well, then we, fast forward into COVID and the 2020, 2021 years, and demand went through the ceiling. Everybody wanted campgrounds. There was a high demand. They were selling much faster than they had, and those cap rates compressed, meaning the prices went up. Well, we're in a different market this year. Interest rates are high, so buying a new campground, getting a loan, getting that sourcing the debt for that campground is more challenging. But the owner's expectations are lagging. They're lagging about a year or two behind, and this is typical in all real estate markets. That it doesn't matter whether it's houses or commercial office space, campgrounds. Those sellers are chasing the price that they missed. They're chasing the bus that they didn't get on, and they're still trying to achieve the sale prices that owners were getting a year or two ago. So for us on our front, as we're looking at acquisitions every single day, even off market opportunities we produce, we're dealing with that lag in seller expectations. So it makes more sense at this point in this current market for us to look at developing something new, getting a raw piece of land, entitling it on our own. We'll talk about what that means, and then building something that's gonna make sense for us to cash flow. So this isn't for everybody. This might not be everybody's first property, or it might. This might be somebody who's looking to build just a few sites on a few extra acres they've got, and that might be a great way to get started. For us, in our model, we're looking for bigger properties. We're looking for 150 and above site campgrounds and properties. So, I'll share a little bit of story about the property we're working on, and then of course, Justin and I are working directly on that. But I'd love to get some input from you guys on this. So. As we started getting into the development space, there are a ton of opportunities out there. If you get on the real estate groups, especially the ones that are focused on campgrounds and resorts, to look at not just campgrounds for sale, but also entitled land for sale. They'll usually call it shovel ready. This is where they've already gone to the length to take this raw piece of land, get the zoning that's needed, the permitted use on the land, from the government, basically the blessing to build an RV campground on it. So you can walk in day one, engineering, get going right away. You're usually paying a premium for this. In fact, that was one of many lessons learned by Beyonder, was exploring opportunities like that, knowing that at least some risk and time was already taken out, that somebody had gone through the government processes. But of course, they're typically turning that land over at a higher price. And like we have indicated before, the win is the deal is made on the buy and the buy of that land. And if you're paying an ultra premium for that land up front just because somebody's done that legwork, you really have to weigh it out if it's worth the maybe couple months you're saving in the timeline, or the risk of not necessarily getting that zoning to pursue that route. So fast forward, we're on a new opportunity now, as I mentioned, in our own backyard, where we're taking all these steps. We're looking at land that does not have the zoning needed. We're offering right now on land that is raw, has agriculture zoning, or just different zoning than we need for our property. So it's about building the relationships with the local government, getting in with the local stakeholders who are going to be affected by this, teaching them, educating them. That's a big side of it. Understanding that, we're not building a trailer park. We're building a monument in the community, something that, is not just going to be for people to come live, but for people to come enjoy, recreate, depending on where you're building, they might like tourism, they might not. The place we're looking right now, they don't love the sound of tourism, but they're going to love the use of the property that the community gets. So there's a lot that you have to factor in as you are weighing out the feasibility of getting that zoning and permitted use. So of course, that's a big challenge. Now, you're talking 6 to 9 months just to get that permitted use if everything goes well with the government. Of course, as we know, government does not move efficiently. And that's just before we move into engineering and getting, our permits in place. If we're lucky, the opportunities we're working on today, we might be sticking a shovel in the dirt this same time next year. So want to open that for you guys. Based on that, does that change your thoughts at all, or do you have any inputs on that?
Well, I'm glad I have a couple of campgrounds that are actually operating and having some cash flow when you bring it up from that standpoint. But I think when you talk about that land that you're looking at that was already shovel ready, did they go through the process and educate in the right way? There's a big misconception about RV park versus mobile home park, whether it be from the way that the laws are written to tenant laws that don't always apply to campgrounds, to the way that the utilities are going to be fed to the property. And that could even be on the ma and pa that have the back 40 or have the 3 acres behind their house that they want to put a couple RV spots into. Did they go about it the right way with the local government? And if they don't, then it's do not pass go, do not collect $200, and it's to go all the way back to the beginning. And that can be very, very expensive.
100%.
Yeah, and a lot of the size matters in a way that, like Robert's saying, you might have an acre or two, right? We're talking about a much bigger project, so the time frame can be very different. And having the bids come in could, I guess in theory, if you only have maybe up to 5 sites, you could probably pick up a backhoe and, in a sense, do it yourself. If with the proper permitting. So, I know we're gonna have all sorts of sizes here. With our guests will have different opportunities, and a lot of different questions will come up with, well, what do I do? Like if you only have a couple acres, you're not putting a water park or a pool on it. You're providing a good option for someone to come and stay that might be close to a national park or something to that effect. So I think it does matter a lot with what options you have. Obviously we're looking for a much bigger property to provide the amenities, and that creates a much longer road. Obviously a little bit more opportunity in the sense, a little bit more risk as well, because sometimes you might be living on the property. A lot of our guests, or I've heard a lot of stories anyway, where people start it on the property. They do it in phases, which is another aspect of things here, where what phase do you start with? Do you start with a clubhouse if you've got a large property? Do you start with just 2 pads if you've got a small property? So really lining out the plan for what you have is exceptionally important.
Well, that's a good point. I want to jump in on that real quick on the size, because regardless of whether you're buying or building, This is a reason I mentioned, of course, that we are really focused on places that are generally 150 sites and above, is because we, with our plan, beyond our camp, we can't afford to be on site running every one of these properties. We have to be able to hire people to run those for us. So for listeners who are getting started, this is an important consideration. Your budget may be X, but your goals may be Y. Your goal may be to be on a beach for half the year or to be able to travel more. And if you buy the wrong size property, you might not be able to afford to hire someone to operate it for you while you're away. So that's an important consideration. Is there is a certain amount of operational overhead that's going to be required, regardless of the size of the property, and then the economies of scale really kick in beyond that. So, we found properties where you can get away with this, maybe 75 to 100, but it's got to be a really dialed in operation at that point for you to be able to step away and not be working 7 days a week. That's usually what we're rescuing a lot of campground owners from when we go in to buy, is the 7 days a week, 12-hour days. So, one thing I want to touch on.
They're
Yeah, go
handcuffed to
ahead.
the property, or they think that a camp host is going to solve it for them. And a part-time camp host that spent the last 6 months at a state park and comes into their park is not going to pay the same amount of attention to it. And now they are locked into the park.
Amen to that, Robert. Yeah, it's the expectations. You're the business owner. They are there for a site, maybe a little bit of money above and beyond that. They are definitely not there to make your business profitable. So one thing I want to hit on with you guys, because this is, of course, something that's going to help tilt the decision on buying new. And I know we've got I think our own war chest of horror stories on this. Is one of the big benefits people talk about is, right, and we hit on this beginning, is when you build new, you don't have to worry about all the maintenance issues. You've got new infrastructure, new equipment, new. You don't have the deferred maintenance, the hidden skeletons in the closet. I guess maybe just for fun, let's go around just from our own experience. What are some of the hidden skeletons we found?
Well, I'll mention just electrical issues. As you know, with I think it's Rising Sun, that we have potentially several different grids or things are wired to, and if it makes it time to upgrade something like that, it could be a nightmare for somebody to have to take on such a big task, which is not just simple wiring. So that could be something that you have to deal with, and we see that, of course, in similar kind of thing in like in old homes, right? Sometimes you buy like an old home that might still have knob and tube wiring, while your new insurance isn't going to cover that house until you replace all the wiring. So things like that could come up that you don't visibly see without finding out later through an inspection or something else.
Yeah, and the maps of if we make something new, we have a map, right? We have the engineered plans. We can see exactly where things are. So the true meaning of hidden on some of our properties is insane, right? Like we have no clue where the water lines are until they start gurgling up from the ground, right? And so they are hidden until we find them and understand that water pressures may be lost. We've had a lot of broken water pipes. Last couple weeks, oh my God, right? It was minus 20 in Iowa for like 180 days. I don't know, it felt like forever, but and then once everything thaws out, you really start to understand some of the limitations of the infrastructure. But it's really nothing to be scared of necessarily. I mean, you're going to have problems with new as well, right? I mean, how many times? Well, maybe how many times, but you build a new house and you're calling for warranty, right? Like you're probably going to have an issue no matter what. So I wouldn't say it's necessarily anything to be exceptionally scared of, but at the same time, when you're buying used, what do? You test drive it maybe as a car, but you do your due diligence with the property and you make sure that you're looking into the details. What pedestals are there, what electrical, check your water lines, your buildings, your faucets and water heaters, and do everything right. And then
Swimming pool.
one of the biggest skeleton, Adam, is a pool, a very
Ooh.
specific pool. you know
Yeah.
and so leave no stone unturned, and don't be afraid to ask the questions. From any stance, if you're building, ask your engineer, make sure you absolutely understand exactly what he's designing. If you're buying used, then ask the owner. Like maybe they don't know, but don't be afraid to ask the hard questions as well to understand what you're looking at.
Robert, how about you?
A lot of owners make the mistake because they're trying to make their books look good when they're getting ready to sell the property. Is there is also that short-term deferred maintenance and short-term investments that they don't make, whether it be buying supplies, whether it be upgrading on the items that are currently there, and then you end up showing up at the park and the cupboard's bare because those different things were there. It made the books look good, it made the P&L look good in the months before you bought and sold, but again, as being the investor or the operator that's coming into it, you do need to do that due diligence that Justin's talking about, so that you know what are the average costs that you should be expecting. How much does housekeeping cost? How much does supplies cost? If they have livestock or animals on it, how much does it cost to actually feed them? And if you're not used to that, where are you actually going to find feed at 7 a.m. on a Monday morning? So those are real life examples of things that you have to be able to figure out.
Yes, sir. And to some of Justin's point too, and I will say that I agree that there are some hidden things like not knowing where water lines are, and there's a way to mitigate a lot of this. And again, as Justin mentioned and Robert echoed, proper due diligence. This is something that we have built a really good system that is still improving on a regular basis with our own purchases. The swimming pool Justin mentioned was our very first property we purchased. There were very limited resources when we got into the outdoor hospitality space to teach you how to buy one of these properties. In fact, there was one course and it was effectively a modified how to buy a mobile home park course. So it was really not even close to what we have today. And we've built upon it. Every lesson we've learned along the way has added a new policy, it's added a new form, it's added a new clause in the contract. Our contract that we used to purchase campgrounds now is over 50 pages just of lessons learned. So, I'll mention like the swimming pool, for example. That was one where, the sellers told us it was good, and I whether or not they were truthful, that's debated. Even if somebody believes they're being truthful, you should trust but verify. You should say, okay, I that's great. You're telling me that it's fine, and I'm going to get someone else in. In our case, these guys, it sounds like they had patched over a crack, painted over it, filled the pool with water, and then we had a pool company come look at it, and they said, well, it looks fine from what we can see, until unfortunately we found out the entire liner of the pool was compromised. So it's one of those hard lessons learned. But again, this can all be mitigated with proper due diligence, and not to say you won't have maintenance costs on a new property. That would be a mistake for you to think that you could walk in and not build a maintenance reserve, because that brand new property today has items with a service life on it, has things that are going to break. And if you don't budget for it now, you might enjoy a year or two of very low maintenance costs, and now all of a sudden be forking out money. So, even a new campground should come with building a reserve for maintenance and
Yes.
eventual repairs and upgrades. Because, and this is, I'll say, is something that we've seen time and time again with a tired old campground, is a lot of owners are really good at taking the money out of the business. They fund their lifestyle, they leave enough in there to run the campground, they don't plan for the future. They don't expect to upgrade or enhance amenities down the road, and by the time we're looking at it, this place hasn't been touched aside from basic maintenance in 15 years, and it's behind the curve. We should always be planning to refresh a campground. Don has talked before about depreciation of campground. Well, the reason the government depreciates these things is because they expect it has a service life, and we're going to replace it at the end of that. We typically don't. However, we should be looking at that through that lens, that every asset we have on the property has a serviceable life, and we're planning to enhance it or upgrade it so we can be on the leading edge in the future. So, what do you guys think? Any different opinions on buying new versus buying old? Does that change anybody's opinion from earlier?
Not necessarily, no. Um,
I'd say
I
I
want to,
just
yeah,
yeah. Go ahead, Justin.
I do. I just want to bring up like some of the complexities with the new, a little bit more beyond that, and the entitlements in government, and we have like what we're working on right now, and we've actually seen it on improving existing as well. But starting relationships with the local government, with some of the town managers and whatnot, and getting them on board with the whole project. it can go along the lines of improving a property and changing things in the community. But even more important, when you're talking about getting entitlement for the property, and it might be something where they consider tourism a bad thing, or too much growth is a bad thing, or they see that, like what we said, a mobile home type of situation where maybe they just don't understand. So working with your local authorities is going to be imperative to make sure that the project comes out successful.
Not to mention, I'm going to add to that, being consultative versus prescriptive. The example Justin's giving in particular, this local government, we went in and our first thing we did when we met the town manager was we introduced ourselves. We told them what we did. We told them how much we loved the area. We didn't even have land parcels picked out yet. And we told this town manager, we'd love to build something here. Tell us what this town needs. And through listening and just learning and asking questions, we were able to put together a business plan that won over the hearts of a local government entity that actually owns one of the parcels of land we're looking at. Now, we'll find out in the next 48 hours if we won them over enough for them to accept our offer on their land. But that said, we approach this a lot different than we would normally think. For us, in our world of outdoor hospitality, we always think of an RV resort as a good thing. If we had approached these guys with an RV resort plan, we would have scared them. Instead, our plan in this particular town is that we're building a sportsman's retreat. This is something that really catches their interest. The parcels we're looking at back up to public land. A lot of people are out there with ATVs, hunting, fishing. There's a lot of other use, and this really resonated with them. And this is what's helped get us through. In addition to identifying a need the town had, this town doesn't have a community pool. In fact, the only pool in that town right now is at a hotel locally. So there are people who go to the hotel just to use the pool. So when we told them we were talking about building a pool on the property, boy, did they light up, because we already knew ahead of time that was a local need. And when we were able to tell them that we would offer a discount for anybody who had the town's name on their driver's license or that lived in the county, they got excited. So it's about, certainly, like I said, being consultative versus prescriptive. Don, I think you had
Really
well, I was gonna say that goes back to our previous episode where we talked about being part of the community, right? Where will be the place the community goes to because this is the community pool or whatever. It's not just a campground. It's part of what people expect and part of their lives now.
You talked about that being that marina when you grew up and having that as the destination. And it was only later that you reflected back that, oh, that happened to be an RV park as well, that there were campers there. You went there as a family because it was that destination. I think the health benefit of that is also very, very important to the community and tying into what their needs are. But I still look at it as to, I'd rather know where things are buried. Justin, you're bringing up with being out here digging at the property, looking for a shutoff valve. Because we didn't have the map and didn't know where it was at, and trying to find that. So I'd rather know where it was at, because the engineer told me this is where it was actually buried.
And to go back to the earlier point there too, Adam, is I would guess I would suggest for anybody building a new campground, even though the builder or developer gets it all completed and done, hey, it's all done, you're good to go. I would just the same as in the housing residential space. You always, even in the new build home, you still want to do an inspection because there's always things that they'll find wrong. So even in a brand new campground, I'd say still put up the upfront cost, send in an inspector to come and check all the systems, make sure everything's working good. That way, the builder has to go back and fix it before you open up and have your first guest show up and, hey, my plugs don't work, or whatever. That'd be kind of a embarrassing for your first day. So just take that extra expense and do a full inspection of the property before you're fully opened up.
And we'll do a whole other episode on just the due diligence to purchase, but don't skimp on the inspections. As Don mentioned, I mean, a $2,000 environmental inspection today might reveal you're sitting on a Superfund site which is not super fun, that you're going to have to deal with down the road if there was a bigger contamination there. Be prepared to spend potentially tens of thousands of dollars for these inspections. However, that money you spend today may save you a ton of headache down the road. Robert, I think, could catch you off.
No, when they open a new stadium or they open a new racetrack, they go in and they flush all the toilets at the exact same time. I know when the Baltimore Ravens opened their stadium, they had school kids come in, and at the 300, 200, 100 level, they all had them flush at the exact same time just to test the plumbing out. So that's the type of due diligence you want to be doing.
That's due diligence
Yeah.
there. One final point I want to make in closing before we wrap up today, though, is whether you're looking to buy or build, there are a lot of benefits to either. For someone who's really just getting started, it may be a better idea to consider buying an existing campground for a couple of reasons. Again, if you do your due diligence, you can mitigate a lot of that infrastructure risk. The other side, too, when it comes to financing, of course, is you've got a property that's got a track record. It's got a history. As long as you operate it in the way it's been operated, a bank will be able to understand this a lot easier when it comes to giving you a loan, to understand what the potential is, as opposed to building on a pro forma where we're doing something that hasn't been done before. And if we can do feasibility studies, and there's a lot we can do to project what may happen, but nobody really knows what's going to happen until you open that online booking engine, until you open the front gates and really start seeing how many people come in. So again, benefits to both. We are in the space of doing both. I think there are different balanced risks to each. We've covered a lot of the pros and cons to it today. Of course, this conversation will continue in the Patreon community of the Campground Catalyst page, which you can access at campgroundcatalyst.com. And of course, you can also forward your questions and comments through the contact information in the podcast show notes below. Be sure to subscribe so you stay on top of new episodes coming out. We thank you so much for joining us on another episode of the Campground Catalyst Podcast. Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Campground Catalyst Podcast, where we take you behind the scenes in the fun and gratifying world of outdoor hospitality. We hope you were inspired by today's show and better equipped to take the next steps in your journey. Remember, you can continue the conversation and connect with fellow enthusiasts by visiting our website and joining the Campground Catalyst community on Patreon at campgroundcatalyst.com. There, Patreon members get exclusive access to special listener perks, they get their opportunity to engage with the host, and they get their questions answered on one of our future upcoming shows. The Campground Catalyst Podcast is proudly sponsored by Beyonder Camp, your trusted partner in fueling your success in outdoor hospitality. Until next time, keep both your campfires and your passions burning.